The world is facing the economic and social disruptions induced by the coronavirus disease or COVID-19, and everyone is challenged to find ways on adapting to new normal. Filipinos are not exempted from this global health dilemma and have aggravated the employment problems that have existed under normal circumstances. So how is the pandemic reshaping the labor market? In this video, we will focus on the pre-COVID employment landscape of the National Capital Region and its current labor market situation amid the pandemic. In the October 2019 Labor Force Survey of the Philippine Statistics Authority, there are 9.4 million individuals in the working age population. Out of 9.4 million individuals in the working age population in NCR, 60% or 5.7 million are in the labor force, where 95% or 5.4 million are employed, leaving 262,648 unemployed individuals. NCR is a highly service-driven sector as opposed to neighboring regions in Calabarzon and Central Luzon, which are manufacturing hubs. In the JobsFit 2022 report released by the DOLE Bureau of Local Employment, the National Capital Region has a total of 6 identified key employment generators, such as the Information Technology and Business Process Management, or also known as the IT/BPM, Wholesale and Retail Trade, Construction, Health and Wellness, Transport and Logistics, and Hotel, Restaurant, and Tourism. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization officially declared the coronavirus disease as a pandemic. 5 days after, the Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte, through Proclamation No. 929 Series of 2020, placed the entire country under a state of calamity and enforced quarantine measures to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. NCR, which is the country's seat of government and economic powerhouse, is currently the epicenter of the COVID-19 cases in the country, with the most number of reported cases and death rates. As of August 12, 2020, the total number of deaths in NCR accounted for almost 50% of the country's death rates. During the same period, the number of COVID-19 cases has soared to 76,870, with Quezon City topping the list at 12,819. The recent Labor Force Survey as of April and July 2020 showed the instant numerical effects of COVID-19 in the national and regional labor market. In the April 2020 Labor Force Survey in NCR, the labor force participation rate sank to 54% from 60% in 2019. Employment rate to 87% from 95%, unemployment rate to 12% from 4%, and underemployment rate at 10% from 3%. It further plummeted in the July 2020 rounds of the Labor Force Survey. The low employment and high unemployment rate are manifested in the displaced and laid-off workers. The underemployment rate reflects the number of workers who were affected by different flexible working schemes implemented by private companies to sustain their operations. The labor force participation rate figures reflects the previous laid-off workers in the earlier part of the pandemic, particularly during the enforcement of enhanced community quarantine, where most employees were still allowed to use their existing leave credits. But as the quarantine extends, workers are forced to use up all their leave credits, and most of them were eventually laid off in the recent days of the pandemic. On May 7, 2020, the Philippine Statistics Authority made a historic announcement that the Philippine economy shrank for the first time in 22 years. Now, how do these figures manifest or translate in the labor market? With the region in strict confinement measures, the mobility of people, goods, and services, which were restricted with those deemed unessential by the Interagency Task Force, were suspended, causing a direct blow on both the formal and informal economy. In the consolidated establishment reports submitted to DOLE-NCR as of June 2020, a total of 17,740 companies have been negatively affected by the social and economic consequences of COVID-19, leaving 900,000 distressed employees in the formal economy. In order to sustain their operations and preserve employment, private firms have implemented cost recalibration measures and flexible work arrangements such as telecommuting, reduction of workdays, rotation of workers, and forced leaves. Based on DOLE-NCR's report as of June 2020, there were 4,302 firms in Metro Manila that have implemented flexible working arrangements, which gives 386,960 employees from the private sector an opportunity to stay at work and get compensated during these unprecedented times. The COVID-19 pandemic had put much negative impact on the informal economy workers, as the nature of their jobs do not provide the same options for formal economy workers during the lockdown measures. Not working and staying home means losing their jobs and their livelihoods, and so the stay-at-home protocol of the Interagency Task Force has directly affected their economic activities that are mostly held outside confined establishments or in the streets. An initial assessment of the identified key employment generators in the region showed that the IT BPM is still seen to remain as NCR's top employment generator due to its flexible nature of work. However, as most of the clients abroad have been suffering from the economic blow of the COVID-19, BPO firms are still contending with the declining demand due to project deferments and cancellation of their offshore accounts. The wholesale and retail trade was one of the most hard-hit sectors during the earlier period of community quarantine. But as it caters to the goods and services essential to the Filipino household, it was also one of the first sectors that were allowed to operate on a skeleton workforce basis. Also, the gradual recuperation in this sector may be attributed to the surge of online selling services through various social media platforms or third-party online applications. Despite the sudden suspension of construction activities in the earlier period of the ECQ, the construction industry was permitted to operate during the implementation of general community quarantine, as the nature of its operations allow it to adhere to the government's strict health and safety protocols. The construction industry is also seen to help spur the economic growth as we bounce back from the effects of the pandemic. With the health and wellness sector at the forefront to fight COVID-19, employment in this sector was retained at full capacity amid the economic crisis. Health workers are still in demand as the number of cases continue to increase, with more people investing further to improve their overall health and lifestyle during this difficult time. The suspension of public transportation and non-essential land, air, and sea travel has placed the transportation sector in an uncertain and unfavorable situation. In terms of logistics, the sector has suffered from the containment measures due to mobility restrictions in the region, but the recent surge of Transport Network Vehicle Service or TNVS has been producing jobs for this sector. Finally, the hotel, restaurant, and tourism is currently considered the hardest hit sector, as it provides non-essential and leisure and entertainment services. But in NCR, some hotels were repurposed into isolation and quarantine facilities to hold repatriated overseas Filipino workers, following the health protocols of the government. Some also became accommodation facilities for Filipinos with essential work who resides on areas far off from their places of assignment. With the gradual easing of the lockdown restrictions without a viable vaccine, countries around the world are preparing for a new life after COVID-19, which requires adapting a new mindset and lifestyle that we are yet to fully embrace. And the advent of the pandemic has indeed brought us closer to the reality of a VUCA world. VUCA is an abbreviated American military term in the mid-1990s and stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. The new normal has placed us in a situation of volatility and uncertainty due to unpredictability of immediate future caused by fluctuating number of COVID cases despite government efforts to mitigate the crisis. It is also considered complex given that the health crisis have caused economic recession, leading to creating better policies in consideration of the recent turn of events. We are also facing an ambiguous situation at present as business strategists and economic planners are confronted with an unprecedented crisis. As frontliners to fight COVID-19, medical doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and technologists remain in demand in the National Capital Region. Medical researchers and writers are also needed in order to provide accurate and coherent information on health and wellness. Wellness trainers are also in demand, given the increasing awareness and investment of people to improve their overall health and lifestyle. There are also in-demand jobs in the IT BPM sector, such as web-based application or software developers, and customer service or technical service representatives, with the other sectors transitioning their business operations using various digital platforms. Those in the quality assurance field are also in demand to assist end users in maximizing the performances and features of online or digital applications created by software developers. You will also notice the increase in the demand for transport network vehicle service drivers and heavy equipment operators and safety engineers. There's also a demand for online teachers in NCR, given that the region is home to many of the higher education institutions or HEIs. The education sector is not one of the identified key employment generators in NCR, but the demand for online teachers are still noteworthy, given that majority of the HEIs are transitioning to online or distance learning methods for students. This would mean that online teachers should still ensure a conducive learning environment for students, in addition to being proficient in the use of modern technology. Experts claim that the advent of COVID-19 had also accelerated the uptake of Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies that could automate and possibly eliminate certain jobs. And before COVID-19, the National Capital Region has been confronted with the challenges in its employment landscape, since firms are encouraged to explore the feasibility of automating skills and jobs in view of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Digitalization takes a significant role in the new normal era, making it a necessity of businesses to sustain their operations and requiring its workforce to be equipped with the 21st century skills to remain competitive amid disruptions in the labor market. Amid the rise of the artificial intelligence or AI, the boundaries of humans and machines are now becoming increasingly blurred, and the workforce has to leverage on the distinct human skills such as adaptability and flexibility, tech savviness, creativity and innovation, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and leadership. Adaptability and flexibility are two complementary skills needed for the worker to quickly adjust with the evolving demands of the labor market. Tech savviness, or also known as being a tech savvy, is a basic skill in the digital age, and firms are looking for people that have an essential understanding or mastery of IT devices and other business equipment. Creativity and innovation are one of the relevant 21st century skills. The market would always demand for creative and innovative insights to solve complex problems and increase organizational productivity. Critical thinking is one of the desirable skills of employers. Critical thinkers have strong decision-making and problem-solving skills that move a company forward and remain competitive. Emotional intelligence complements critical thinking. Our emotional quotient sets us apart from the artificial intelligence of the machines. The computer systems are limited to solving problems and issues using logic. But as Filipinos innately crave for the human interaction, there will always be situations or concerns that can only be solved by human connection. And last but not the least, employers seek leaders that have the ability to communicate well, motivate their employees, handle and delegate responsibilities, listen to feedback, and have the flexibility to solve problems in an ever-changing workplace. And there you have it. These are the initial labor market trends in Metro Manila, brought to you by the Department of Labor and Employment, National Capital Region. Visit our website today and follow us on social media.